to this CAD Dimensions Lunch and Learn on SOLIDWORKS Electrical, looking at customization. So we'll be looking at some template design and figuring out where the options to customize what we do inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical, where they live and what they actually do inside the software. So taking a look at what we'll be talking about today, we'll start by discussing title blocks. So importing a new title block, maybe you're coming from a different software or you're doing stuff inside of SOLIDWORKS. You have that DWG file, but you want to bring it into SOLIDWORKS Electrical. Take a look at bringing that geometry in and even some of those attributes if we have them. We'll look at making changes to those title blocks, so to make them more specific for our electrical projects. We'll then dive into some project configuration settings. So pretty much everything you see inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical is customizable in some way or some form. So we'll look at those project configurations and go through some of the tabs and options inside of there. We'll wrap up with wire style customization, so making new groups and making new wire styles and equipotential equations. Finally, when we're all done with that, we'll use our test project today and actually create a template that we can use in the future. All right. So we'll start off by talking about title blocks. So what I want to start by doing is bringing in an existing title block out of a DWG that I had saved, and just kind of walk you through the steps of adding attributes or changing attributes inside this title block. We'll finish up in this segment by adding some rows, so row numbering, and then putting that title block to our drawings, so actually using the title block. All right, so with that said, I will launch into SOLIDWORKS Electrical. I have nothing open right now. I'm starting with a blank design. I'll go to my project manager and hit new. When I said blank design, nothing in electrical ever starts with a blank design. So we're always going to start with a new template. We have a couple default templates that we get with the software. So for this one, I'll just use an ANSI template. It'll ask me to select my language, so I'll choose English, and it'll launch me into my project project properties. So I can call this Customization Lunch and Learn. And I can fill out any information I have on this project. Maybe CAD Dimensions is my customer. I'm going to our Syracuse office today. And then I need description. So what this will end up being is template design. So all the steps that we're going to take to get to our template. So I can hit OK there. And what it will do is pull my ANSI template from the database. So it'll go out to my SQL server, find everything associated with that ANSI template, and actually put it into this new project. We'll give this a couple seconds to launch, and I'll show you what comes in with this default ANSI template. All right. So we'll look at my document book in my document tree. We can see that this template comes with a cover page, which is going to grab any information I gave it from my project settings or my project properties. It has a drawing list. So again, all the defaults here. This one has a single line diagram and 2 schematic pages. So all of this is the default template for ANSI. So this gets me started, but I want to take it a step further and make it my own CAD Dimensions custom template for this. So I'll close out of these guys. When I look at this, I can start to tell, maybe based on my projects, I never use a single line diagram. So it doesn't make sense to have a single line diagram inside my template. So all I can do, I can come in, right click, and hit delete. It'll ask me if I really want to delete it. Go ahead and say yes. And we'll start to form just the pages or the sheets that I want inside the document book of each new project that I start. All right, you can look at sheet number 4, which is my power schematic, and I can see that it's got a title block, and again, it's the default title block for this project. And this is where I want to start to make some changes. So where I'll bring in a new title block, and it's just one that I use on the mechanical side out of SOLIDWORKS as a SOLIDWORKS drawing, I can come to my Library tab, my Title Blocks Manager, and I'm looking for a B size that I'm actually going to import. So here are the options of my B size drawings, but I want to import a DWG here. So my title block import wizard pops up, and it's going to ask me to select some files that I want to bring in. So I have my example DWG, so it is looking for that DWG file type. And I'll go ahead and hit next. And it will ask for a configuration. So if I've already brought in title blocks in the past, and I've associated some attributes, and I've mapped up how I want attributes to come from either the AutoCAD electrical or from a different program into SOLIDWORKS, I can map them here and save that configuration. For me, it's the first time I'm bringing this in, so I don't have a configuration. Go ahead and say next. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new description for this. So this is my Lunch and Learn title block. I can give it a class, so if I know that it's going to be an ANSI B-size title block, I can go ahead and place it there. My unit system is going to be Imperial, and if I have a library that I want to assign it to, so I can throw it into my CAD Dimensions library, all this information is going to help me search for this title block in the future. And we'll talk about this row setting in a little bit. Go ahead and hit OK. Hit next. This part of the title block import wizard gives me the opportunity to convert any attributes. So if I'm coming from a different software that has attributes tagged in the title block, the software will pick up on that and will give you the chance to either replace them or delete those other attributes. For my case, I had a blank title block with no attributes, so I don't get those options here. Go ahead and hit next. This is where I was talking about having that configuration. So if I was mapping attributes or if I was saving specifics inside my title block, I can go ahead and save that configuration. For me, I had nothing there, so I'll go ahead and say don't save. And we'll finish. All right. So that has created my B-size template, and I'll go through my filters. And I know that it's in my CAD Dimensions library, and right there is my Lunch and Learn title block. We'll go ahead and launch that and see what I actually have with it. So I can see my title block that I just imported, and it's got some text in this title block, but as I double click it, I'll realize that I get a properties window. So what this is telling me, what this properties window is telling me, is that this is just a text element. It's not actually a smart attribute. So I can't link project properties to this draw one. So what I'm going to do is delete that out, and I want to still use this drawing number phase, or drawing number area of the title block. But what I need to do is grab an attribute to place it. So from my edit title block, I have different groupings of attributes. So I have project level attributes, which are my project name, my customer information that I filled out at the beginning. I have book level attributes, so anything that is being described as that bundle, so my book. Then if I'm using any folders in my project template, I have folder level attributes. And for this schematic page, I have drawing level attributes. So I want to use a drawing level attribute to call out this drawing number. So my drawing number is going to be linked to my mark, and as I expand this out, we do get descriptions of what these attributes are. So I can tell that this is my drawing mark. So I'll go ahead and double click, and that'll bring this into almost as a symbol, but it's actually an attribute that I can place. And now when I double click, instead of getting that properties window for the text, I can now see that I have a name of a folio tag. So folio is my sheet or my drawing, and the tag is my mark. So I have this call out to tell me that this is in fact an attribute. And I can still adjust my properties here. So if I want to increase the size of my font, I can go ahead and change that there. And we'll place my drawing number as the folio tag. I also want to bring in my title, which would be the description of this sheet. So again, using my attribute list, I can expand my description. double click, and I'll go ahead and place that in this title block. Instead of double clicking and going through and changing my height again, we do have the ability to right click and copy the properties of one attribute and actually paste them to another attribute. Just a quick way to keep everything uniform inside your title block. Alright, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'll look at my power and realize it's identical. Nothing's happened. That's because I haven't actually applied this title block to my project yet. So what I want to do is go back to my document tree, right click on my sheet that I'm working on, and go to my title block flyout menu. And this is where I can either delete out title blocks, so work on a blank page, or replace. So I want to use my replace function here. And again, I'll go into my filters and go to my CAD library here. And I want to replace my current default one with my Lunch and Learn title block that we just created. And we can start to see that my attributes are in fact pulling through. So my drawing number, which is my mark, is 04, and my title, which is called Power, is coming across. As I look at my numbering scheme here, I can realize that 1, 2, 4, 5 isn't super sequential, and I want this to reflect that it's actually drawing number 3. So I can right-click on my document book and renumber my drawings based on a formula that we'll talk about in a bit. For right now, I'm just going to grab my next available number, and this will reorder to 1, 2, 3. Again, my title block will update to reflect that. Same as my description. So I wanted to look at my properties here. This is a power scheme for motor. And bring in that information. Realize that this is a little bit too long. So I might have to make some changes to my title block here, which is fine. So it's going to be a living document until we make this template. So I can go ahead and make the adjustments that I have to. All right, so I kept my my title block open just for that reason. So what I want to do first, because I have that longer description as my title, first thing I want to do is come into my edit attribute or edit title block, and I want to use my multiple attribute setting. So what the multiple attribute does is allows you to have multiple lines of text for the same attribute. So my distance between, I'll end up doing 0.25 because that was the height of my text. The number of attributes will be 2, so I'll have line 1 and line 2. And I'll go ahead and click on this. And what that gives me is a second row of descriptive text. So I'll go ahead and drag this down a little bit just for spacing, and I'll hit save again. So now if I come back into my project properties here, or my sheet properties for this one, I can see that right after scheme I'm going to go off the page. So what it looks for is a pipe bar to look for that separation. So I'll say OK, and now when I do my title block update, it'll actually see that pipe bar and put it onto a new row of my attribute. Alright, other thing I want to do in my title block is change the sheet 101. So right now I can see that I have 4 pages inside my document book. This should be sheet number 3. And I want to be able to automate that using attributes. So again, if I double click this, I get my properties box that's showing me that this is really just text. So I'll go ahead and delete that out, and underneath my draw tab I can add text. So I'll bring back in sheet, and my height's going to be a little bit smaller for this area. So I'll go ahead and snap that down. Alright. For the next part, I want to turn on my object snap here with endpoints and insertion points, because I want to be able to line up all my text for this area. All right. I'm also going to reduce my snap settings down just a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier to move. And we'll turn our snap on. All right. Good there. So the next attribute I want to bring in is the sheet number that I'm currently on. So that's going to be my folio number, or the order number of this drawing. So go ahead and double click here. Again, why I brought my insertion point on is I can drop this right onto where I placed the sheet. So that's going to line up. Now if I turn ortho on, so my F8 hotkey, I can click my folio number and I can drag it orthogonally, so it's going to stay aligned. We'll do that. Alright, that looks okay. Next thing I want to do is bring in some more text. So I want that of statement to come in next. And again, I will turn off my snap so I can actually hit my object snap on the corner, select my of, and using ortho, I'll drag him over. Alright, and the last attribute I want is the total number of pages that I have inside this book. So the number of drawings in the book comes in as this attribute. I'm going to double click, we'll snap to the coordinate or to the insertion point, and I can just drag him down to that placeholder. Alright, we got some overlap here, but let's see what it looks like inside our project. So I'll hit save, go back into my power scheme, and I'm going to update that title block. So where it said sheet 1 of 1 before, now it says sheet 3 of 4, which is accurate, but I still have a little bit cleanup work to do inside my title block. So we can come through and actually start to fix our justifications. So maybe I want that 3 to be centered between the sheet and the of. Same with my total number sheets. We can do a center justification. And by clicking that dot, that's how I'm getting that ortho to stay on. So we'll hit save again, and we'll do one more update here. See if that looks a little bit better. Great. Got some much better spacing out of that. Alright. So using those attributes, we now can drive our properties into our title block automatically. The other thing I wanted to look at in this title block is how would we set up row numbering. So out of my SOLIDWORKS B-size schematic, I kind of have these quadrants or these areas set up with A, B, and 1, 2, 3, 4. But I want more specific row numbering for my schematic. So I want to take a little bit deeper look into that. Alright. Eric did have a question here if we hit our double digits on our sheets. So what I'll do is I'll add actually I can just change my mark number here to be number 10. Do a manual mark for that. So again, our spacing is a little tight here. I would have to just play with my spacing to allow for the 10 to even. So maybe for something like that, all I'd have to do is move the of. So he's hiding in here. Maybe just move that over a little bit. We'll save. And we'll go ahead and update our title block again. Cool. So we get our spacing that way. So again, Eric had a question here. Electrical doesn't have the property sheet number or similar properties to what we're used to in SOLIDWORKS mechanical. Our properties come from our attributes, so they're all going to be linked to one of these attributes that we have inside our title block properties. All right, so I'm happy here, and like I said, I don't really want to use the standard that's coming from the mechanical side. I want to create my own row numbering. So I'll go back into my edit title block area, and I'll start to create some rows. Now a row is just like any other attribute, but it responds a little bit differently. So from my miscellaneous folder in my attribute list, I have a row attribute. So I'll double click him, and for this one I'm going to turn on my snap setting. So I'll hit F9 to get my snap setting. And in my lower left corner, you can see my actual XY coordinates. So it's on a grid and it's snapping to that grid. So for my XY, I want to place my first row at 1, 10. So over 1, up 10. I'll go ahead and place my first row there. All right. So having one row is okay. Ideally, we would have rows, and for this one, I want a 2-columned page. So I can keep combing in and placing row after row, but I can also use my Modify tab and create an array. And what the array will allow me to do is pick and choose how many rows and where and how many columns I want to place. So for this row, I want to have, or for this title block, I want to have 20 rows coming down my left side, and then I want a second column of rows coming down right the middle of my page. So my spacing per row is going to be 1/2 inch, and my second column will be 7.5 inches away from my first column. The only thing left to do is to select my objects, which in this case will be my row attribute, and hit OK. So what that starts to populate are all the row attributes as an array. Down here I get a couple attributes that interfere with my title block, so I don't really want to use those. I can come in and just delete those out. So they've created with the array, but once the array is created, they become their individual entities. All right. So with that said, I now have these attributes on my page, but they're not intelligent yet. I can't really trigger them to do anything. And I mentioned this when I created a new title block, or with the title block properties, that would come in and investigate these rows again. So with these properties, I can tell this title block that it is going to have rows, so I have that check mark. And the number of my first row is going to be 1. I want this to go 1 through 20, and then I want to pick up and have 21 down to my last row. I want to start with 1, and this is why I had my snap settings turned on, because it's going to ask me for the position of that first row. So where did I place this first row, which I placed at 110 on my XY scale. So I'll say 1 here. All right, and for this part, for my screw that up. My first row position is actually going to be the height. So the first row is at a height of 10. The height of each row, and this is where I use my array setting, is going to be a setting of -0.5. So my first row is up top, and I'm going to go backwards, -0.5 down to 0, 0. So go ahead and type that in. Oops. 0.5. There we go. Gotta have that 0 in there. And then my number of rows. So based on my array, I know I have 20 rows placed in here. I now get the option, do I want to restart? So do I want this to go 1 through 20 and then pick up again and do 1 through 20? Or do I want to continue my rows, my row numbering onto the next column, which I will do. All right. The number of my first column, again, is going to stay at 1, so I'm starting here at 1. The first column position, so this is asking me the X value of my first column. So where did I place that first row in my first column, which happened to be at a value of 1. So I placed that at 110. The width of the column, and again, this goes back to how I set up my array. So I had a spacing of 7.5 between my 2 columns in my row array. And my number of columns, so this will be my other column, so it's just 1. So with those settings in there, I'll go ahead and hit save on my title block, and I'll come back into my my drawing. So again, it's not going to update until I tell it to update through my right-click title block and update. So yes, and with that, I now have my 20 row column 1, and this one makes it to 35 because I deleted those last 5 rows. But I now have a 2-column drawing title block. All right. So for that title block, we imported some existing title block out of my SOLIDWORKS DWG. brought it in, we added attributes, we edited attributes, and then we went through and added rows. So the last thing I want to do here is go ahead and assign this title block, so my new title block, to my other drawings. So my control drawing is still this older one. So I can come through and say title block, replace, and we'll use our filter. Actually, it's right here. So I'll just grab my lunch and learn title block, and again, it's going to replace those attributes, and now it's my control drawing, drawing number 4, and we'll replace that with the title block that we just created. All right. So next part I want to do is go through some project configuration settings. So I've got my title block set up. I'm happy with the path that my project's going, or my template's going. And now I want to make sure that every time I use this template, all my settings are going to be correct to how I design, or how this company designs. We'll jump back into electrical, and underneath my project settings, so actually I'm okay with my drawing there, and I'll stay on sheet number 10, my power scheme for motor. So underneath my project tab, I have a configurations option, and this is where all the customization is really going to live for our project settings. And we can see that there's more than just project settings. We have wire styles, signal line diagram styles, PLC drawing, so how our default PLC looks, how our custom PLCs look. Same with terminal strip, connectors, cross-referencing. Everything that we can do in the software, we can customize to an extent. So for me, I just want to look at my project settings. We'll see that we have tabs inside this project configuration. So first options here are any languages. So am I going to be able to, or do I want to be able to swap between 2 languages? So maybe my company is international, so do I want to be able to type in both types of languages between English and French and be able to convert at the click of a button? My unit system, again, this is based on the ANSI template, so it's coming in as imperial. My default cable size is going to be gauge, so we'll use our American wire standard here. Our font, so how do we want to display, our date, how do we want to display our date? Is it going to be day, month, year, month, day, year without slashes, or day, month, year as the system option? So we want to do month, date, year. Go ahead and grab that option. We'll get the preview for what it's going to show. Again, this can be customized if we want to type in a different option for any of these. All right. For revision control, so how do we want our revs to go? Is our first rev 0? Is our first rev A? We have defaults in here, so we have 4 defaults. We can always make a custom one as well. So we wanted to start to look at how we want to number these. We can use existing variables from our project and actually go ahead and create how we want to call out our revisions. So we have some predefined ones that we can use, or else we can go ahead and type in what value or what values we want for our revisions. So I'm not going to use a custom for this one. I'll start with rev 0, and then I'll letter my revisions ABC. All right. Down at the bottom of the page, we have our default setups. So what is our default configs that we want to use for PLC numbering, our PLC creation? So when we make a PLC drawing or a terminal strip drawing, what documents do we want to use? And we can see that we have some application level settings set up right now. We can always go through and actually search for all our various setups in our terminal block drawings or in our PLC drawings. All right. Next tab over is our graphic tab. So I haven't really drawn anything on my page yet, so I haven't been able to analyze any of my graphic settings. So what I'll do first before I jump into those is I'm just going to draw some wires. So from my schematic tab, I'll use draw multiple. My spacing is a half because those are my row settings, and I'll just come down and draw some wires. and I'll bridge off of that, and I'll draw one more set of wires here, just so I can start to see my connection point. So when I talk about graphics, it's going to be linked to things that appear on the page automatically for us. So I have these 5 pink dots that are acting as connection points. If I go back into my project configurations under graphic, this is where I can start to control what it's going to look like on my page. So maybe instead of having that pink dot, I want a larger teal dot. So I'll do setting a 0.1, hit OK. So now my connection points are going to come across based on that project configuration. All right. Other settings inside of our graphics are the line types that we want to use for specific areas inside the software. All right. New for 2016 is this nodal indicator. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. And what we can start to see in our wire cabling order for our connection points here, I guess I have to have some symbols in there, or components in there. But our nodal indicator will show us our to from list for these components. So until I place some symbols, we'll go back to that one. All right. Speaking of symbols, our next tab inside of project configurations are our default symbols that we're going to use anytime I call up a wire label, an equipotential label, cable label, or location label. So a location box can have a custom symbol to it. So for this one, I'm going to look deeper at our equipotential label. So I'll say OK, and I'm looking at my wires. What I want to do is actually number these wires. So from my process tab, all my wires on this scheme are new, so I'll go ahead and say number new wires. We'll hit OK, and I can start to see that I have my neutral 1, my line 1, line 2, line 3. All right. What I also have, if I right click, I can show high my equipotential label. Let's try it up here. Cool. So my equipotential label is coming in same as how I'm numbering my wires because they're the same. I'm using equipotential numbering for these wires. But what this symbol is, or what this callout is just a symbol. So if I go back into my project configurations here and look at my symbol, you can actually open this or edit this symbol. So go ahead and edit it and hit OK. It's going to launch me into my symbol editor. Similar to how I was doing my title block editor, I have attributes that I can bring in. For this one, it happens to only to be my equipotential tag. But I do have some properties that I can change here. So if I wanted to change the color of my equipotential label, say we'll make it red, and we can put it in a box, let's say. That's how I want to call out my equipotential label. Go ahead and hit save here. Now when I come back in, I can say update, and we can start to see that it's going to be a red label inside a box. So still some work to do, but I just wanted to show you the link between where those symbols are coming from. All right, so those are all living in our symbol properties. All right, fonts, pretty self-explanatory. If we wanted to change any of the default fonts, so every time I bring in my wire numbers for equipotential, they're going to come in as this font with a specific height. We can set it to be bold or italic, and we can change those colors based on all our settings here. All right, so it's just kind of the start of our configurations. The next tab I want to dive into a little bit deeper, which is going to be our Mark tab. So the Mark tab is where we're going to start to drive some of those formulas for how we're going to call out the specifics of our schematic. All right. So we'll look at, specifically here, we'll look at our row column callouts, and we'll look at our component numbering schemes. Jump back in. All right. So from my Mark tab, we can drive how we're going to number books, folders, drawings. So we saw in our drawing that it's going to be a string with two numbers, 0, 1. If I get up to double digits, it'll make a double digit for me. And this comes right across when I right-clicked on my book and said renumber drawings. It's pulling that formula from my Mark configuration inside my project configurations. So we'll just renumber that real quick. So jumping back in, for my row numbers, which I could see before were simply 1 through 20 and then 21 through 35, these are the same on every page. So maybe I want a little bit more of an indicator, and I want to use the drawing number or that sheet mark for my row numbering. So into my configurations, I'll look at my Mark. For the row, I'm going to hit this F of X, which is my formula manager icon. And from here, I can use some predefined formulas, or I can look through all the variables that I have available to create this mark. So for this one, I want to use my file order number, so the number of my sheet or my sheet mark multiplied by 100. So I want that to be in the first values of a 3-digit or a 4-digit number, and then I want to add the row number to it. So I'll go ahead and double-click that predefined formula, and I'll hit OK, and we'll take a look at what this looks like inside our sheet. And this one's going to update immediately, so I don't have to do a title block update for this instance, because all it's doing is changing that attribute for me. So my row number already exists, it's just how do I want to number these rows. And for this instance, it's going to take that 3, and then it's going to add my row number to it. All right. We'll jump back in to my Mark, and we'll come through and we can see what else we can drive marks for. So origin destinations, if we want to call them out anything differently. Components, again, all this is saying, do we want to mark these uniquely by a project, or do we want them to be triggered by the function or location, or function and location, or by each individual book? So the level of control can get very, very small once we're looking at how we want to number items. For me here, I do want to look at how I'm numbering my components. So I'll go ahead and click here and try to drive this numbering scheme. So what I want to do is drive how I'm numbering my components based on the row that the component's placed on. So if I look at my symbols tab here, and I'll just look for maybe a circuit breaker. So we'll grab a circuit breaker, drag and drop them in. We'll see that it's going to default to a root or a mark of a root number plus the order number. So CB1 in this instance gets called out there. What I really want it to be is I still want to use that my root number, so that's CB, but I want to pull it from the line that it's on, or the row that it's on, in this instance 302. So from my configurations, back to my Mark, I can look at my component settings. Again, I have a predefined one in here that's looking at the file order number plus the row number plus the root. And this one's doing something a little bit different as well, is where it's looking to see if if there's multiple components or multiple symbols of the same type on a row. We want to go ahead and increment that and add a letter to the end of it. So what's nice about 2016 is I can actually hit this calculator and test the formula. So it'll give me the option, so I know that I'm on sheet number 3. My component order is going to be, let's say it's the second terminal or circuit breaker I placed. The component root is CB, and it's going to be on row, we'll say it's on row number 2. So what this is calling out for me is the result that it's going to be, my call out of the symbol will be 302, which is the row number, CB, which is my Mark root, and then the call out of A, because that's my next instance. If this was a 1, it would be blank there. All right. So I want to tweak this a little bit. So I do want to use the fact that it's going to be the row number, but I don't want to trim it. So if I just hit OK here, we'll see the result, and I can jump back into here. So if I go ahead and grab my circuit breaker, you can see that it's calling out my sheet number, or it's calling out my row number, but it's not picking up the sheet, and it's not picking up the number, so the instance number that it's being used. So all it says is 3CB. Based on the way I'm numbering my schemes, we're going to have a lot of 3CBs. There's going to be overlap and associations that I don't care for. So I want to try to get this formula as specific as possible. So I'll go back into my project configurations here and my mark number, and I'm going to edit my component one here. But for this one, I don't actually want to trim, so I don't want to remove any leading zeros from my call out. So what I'm looking for here is the value of my file order, or I'm sorry, the value of my file tag. And I can look at my variables here and see what file tag is, and all that is my file mark, so my number here. All right, and I want to take that to 2 digits, and I don't need to multiply by 100 here, so it's just going to lead, it's going to be my leading value going into my component number. Next thing I want to do is convert my row number into a string value. So we'll take my symbol row, and again I want that to be based on 2 digits. Alright, and I can clear out this extra stuff that was here. So we'll make sure that all my parentheses are closed off correctly. And you'll see that I'll get an error here until it's written correctly, or written in a format that it understands. Alright, so unexpected end of output. Let's see what's going on here. Looks like I got one too many parentheses there. Alright. So I'm grabbing my file tag, so my value here. I'm grabbing my symbol row coming from the sheet. I'm placing in my component root, which I'm happy with. Then I'm going to say if the component order number equals 1, I want to do nothing, so I'm happy if it's 1. Otherwise, if it's greater than 1, I want to go ahead and add a letter to the end of it. Alright, so let's say OK. Say OK again. And these ones are going to stay placed until I go ahead and update my data. Update my marks. So I'll update my marks, and I'm going to do this at a project level for all my components. Go ahead and say OK. And just like that, I can start to see that it's using my row number, and it's using the information from its root mark. And now if I bring one more circuit breaker in, we'll see that it gives it a -A at the end of it. So that's the second instance on this row. All right. So just some of the background of the capability of what we can do for our mark numbers, or any of our component numbering inside the software. All right. We got a couple more inside our configurations. We can go through our title blocks and actually assign what our default title blocks will be. So if I wanted my lunch and learn title block that we created to always be the schematic that we use, I can come in here and assign that lunch and learn title block to be my default scheme. I can update all my related schemes. So now when I come in and say create a new scheme, it'll automatically be the number 5, and it'll automatically be that lunch and learn title block that we created. So now if I want to change my properties, give this a description of new sheet, sure enough, it's going to fill out that information for me automatically. All right. The last option in here is just turning on and off libraries by default. Okay. Last thing I want to show are some wire styles and where the wire style manager is, again, for automation and for customization. So we'll look at adding a numbering group, single wire styles, multiple wire styles, and using that function to drive some equipotential numbering. All right, so where our wire style manager lives is still going to be under our configuration, or our project configurations. If I hit the drop down this time, I can see wire styles. So from the ANSI group, or ANSI template that I'm using, there's 3 default groups. There's an electrical group, an hydraulic group, and a pneumatic group. So for this project, I want to create my own custom grouping. So it'll automatically go to the next available number, which will be 3. And from here, I can choose my properties. So if I want to give it a description to say CAD dimensions wires, it'll give me the option of how do I want to number these. Do I want to start at 1? And do I want every instance of wire to be a new number? So we can see here that even though these are all unique wire styles, my numbering scheme is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Versus the common for different wires means all these are unique. So this is the first instance of a unique, next instance, and so forth. So we're reusing some of our numbering schemes. So I like that common for different wires. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And with the new group, I get my first wire style. So it's just going to put a default wire style in there, and I can drive that using my properties. So if I know that this is going to be an 18 gauge blue wire, I can start to come through and select that it's going to be a power wire, that the line color should actually show up as blue because it's a blue wire. It's going to be a continuous line, and here's where I can start to customize how I want to number these wires. So right now all it's doing is grabbing the next available equipotential number. Maybe I want to do a little bit more detail here. So maybe I want to call out, and I'll go to my variable and simple formulas to see what I have available for me. So maybe I want this to be based on the gauge of the wire. So I'll grab the section attribute, grab the size standard, so how I'm going to call this out, and then it can be a dash with the next available equipotential order number. Oops, a little bit of cleanup there. All right. So again, I can use my test formula and start to say, all right, what's my section is going to be 18. My size is going to be AWG. Oops, AWG. And order number is going to be 1. So this is how I want this wire type to be labeled. So I'll say OK there. In order to get this to work, I actually have to give the wire style enough information. So I want to tell it that it's 18 gauge. The size standard is going to be AWG. Wire color, we'll go ahead and make this blue. And this gets used more in the 3D side of house on when we start to route. And the description can be common blue. All right. So I'll use that information, and I can see that it's updated here. So now that I want to draw this wire type, go ahead and draw a single wire type. I'll go ahead and find it inside of group 3, select it, and now I can draw. Oops, turn my snap settings on. Okay, that looks okay. So I'll draw a single wire type on this row. And under my process tab, I can number new wires. And what that's going to do is grab that numbering scheme that I created for that single wire type. All right. The other option to make any changes to those, I can always go back into my project and wire style properties. We can also, with 2016, we can drive these properties right from our interface. So I can look at my wire style properties from here, click on the pencil to edit, and say, all right, this formula actually has to end with the word Tom. So I can go ahead and put that information in, and all it's going to look for is an update. So I need to renumber these wires. Oops. I want to recalculate these wires, so yes. Come on. One more time. Clear out what's there, and then we'll number our new wires. Oh, I never hit save. That's why. That makes more sense. So we'll look at that wire style one more time. Come through. We'll add the text for Tom. We'll hit OK. This time I'll hit my green check to apply those changes. And now when I come through and number these wires, we'll see that updated equation there. All right. The only other thing I want to show inside the wire styles is adding some multiple wires. And I won't go in too much depth here, but I will show you where the option is. So back to my wire styles, and I'll put this in my CAD dimension wire group. Instead of doing an add, I can do multiple add. And this again will show me a default setting, but it will give me the option to put multiple wires inside a grouping. So maybe this one's going to be a phase 2 orange wire, and this one's going to be yellow. So now what happens if I wanted to draw a cable pretty much in my schematic? I go to my schematic tab, draw multiple wire, go ahead and grab that new grouping that I just created. My spacing is still going to be 0.5 based on my rows, and now I can draw all those wires at once. Alright, so I'm at a point where I'm happy with all my settings. I've customized everything how I want it to be, how I want it to look across my company. So I want everyone to be using these standards. What do I do with it now? So I want to create this as my template. So before I do anything, if I save my template now, all the information that I've drawn to this point, most of it is gibberish, is still going to be part of my template. So I do want to come through and just delete out the information that I've placed inside the schematic, so it doesn't show up every time somebody creates a new project. One thing to verify is to make sure all your components are deleted too, that you don't have any permanent components in this list. All right. We can come through and change some of our properties. So we can call this sheet 1 and sheet 2. So just something that's going to be basic for every user to understand when they're creating this new project. So we'll do that. And I want to close out of all my sheets, and I actually want to close out of my project now. When I launch my project manager again, I can see my lunch and learn that I'm working on. And one of my options here, instead of doing an archive, is to save as a template. So I can call this CAD Dimensions template, hit OK. And what it's going to do is grab all the information that I put into my customization settings. I don't need to, actually I'll open the folder just to show you where all templates live. So all your templates live in Program Data, SOLIDWORKS Electrical, Project Templates, and you can delete them from here. This is actually the only spot to delete templates from. But now when I hit New, one of my options is that CAD Dimensions template that I just created. Hit OK. We can start to see that information that I filled out previously is already going to be in there. What I can also see, so it's going to extract all that data, but what it's also going to save are my wire styles, my labeling schemes for components. All the stuff that's project specific is now going to be automatically in there, so I don't have to recreate the wheel every time I start a new project. All right, so we'll just verify that by, go ahead and verify sheet 1, sheet 2, a new sheet, and if I wanted to draw multiple, I can see that my CAD dimension wires are in fact there. All right. Any questions? Feel free to use the question options in the GoToWebinar. Just a quick note of some events coming up for CAD Dimensions. We have a hands-on test drive in our Syracuse office in a couple days on Thursday. If you have any interest in SOLIDWORKS Mechanical and want some more information on that, feel free to sign up. Next week we have a lunch and learn on customizing CamWorks. So similar concept, but in our CamWorks software. And of course, if you miss anything, just head out to our website. You can watch this video will be uploaded shortly, any other videos from the past, and then check out the blog for up-to-date information or cool projects our application engineers are working on. I'll hang around for a couple more minutes if you do have any questions. As always, feel free to reach out with any questions or give us a call. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.
Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our blog for more great content by clicking on the links in the description below.